So now I'll talk a little bit about how the PMO fits in. So I assume everybody's familiar with the term PMO. It's Project Management Office or Project Management Organization. Excuse me. If the organization has got many strategic initiatives or many strategic goals all happening at the same time, that translates to a number of different projects, then you need to set up an organization. It's efficient. It's worth the effort to set up an organization that will manage all those efforts in parallel. There's generally two types of PMOs, as I'm sure many of you are aware. One is one that sets standards for project execution and then audits for compliance. That ensures some level of consistent output. But there's another type that directly manages a portfolio of projects. You know, the organization that I came from, a large multi-billion-dollar organization, had both types. There was a PMO that was centrally located that essentially set standards for large mega projects. There was a dollar threshold, and everything over that was governed by that process. But then each of the operating sites also had their own localized PMOs that would manage the smaller portfolio of projects, you know, local to that organization. So the latter type is the type we're going to talk about today, and that was the type that I established in Long Harbor. So the advantages, you know, when you're managing a portfolio of projects, you've got a number of projects happening at the same time. Inevitably, you're going to have to prioritize, and I'll talk about prioritization a little bit later. But you can more effectively prioritize and deprioritize projects if you're managing them all centrally. If not, you can end up with pet projects for managers or engineers or software developers in different areas of the business that may or may not necessarily be aligned with the best interests of the business. You get more consistent and predictable results. Certainly, if you've got a common set of resources and a common set of processes, you'll get more predictable results. I used to be of the opinion that results were really all that mattered, and I've had a number of people in the past tell me, well, as long as I'm getting the job done, you know, what does it matter? But predictability and consistency are more important than, you know, many of us realize, especially if you're part of a publicly traded company, when you're essentially held to account either on a yearly and or a quarterly basis. Essentially, at the beginning of the quarter, you'll predict what your earnings will be for that quarter, and then, you know, either Bay Street or Wall Street analysts will hold you accountable for that at the end of the quarter. A great example, I would say, is Apple, probably the largest, most widely held stock in the world, and it just reported its annual results about a month ago, and its revenues were down by 15%, but the stock price was unchanged because they managed the expectations. They were able to predict that and hit the numbers that they predicted. So the absolute value of their results wasn't as important as their ability to manage expectations. The same is true for a project, because, you know, especially in large projects, if the company is investing a lot of money, you need to be able to predict what that investment's going to be, and that helps you build the business case and follow through. Also, managing all projects centrally allows you to maximize your utilization of your resources. So we all know that projects have got ebbs and flows. You know, you might be waiting on a contract to be awarded. You might be waiting on approval. And if you've got other projects that you can work on while you're waiting for those toll gates, then you can on the portfolio level, maximize or minimize your costs. We'll talk a little bit about continuous improvement later on, but again, if you've got a common set of people that are using a common set of processes, then you're able to improve those. You know, those people get better over time, and those processes improve over time. And for those of you in the construction industry, I see Andrew here, your estimating standards improve over time, and that's where your margin sits particularly if you're in the construction industry. So you'll see, though, there's a lot of overlap between, you know, we're at a project management symposium, and we're talking about project management, but running a PMO is very, very similar to running an operating organization. In an operating organization, you know, the focus is at a very simple level, taking a set of inputs, running them through a process, and producing a set of outputs, and doing that as effectively and efficiently over time as you possibly can. A PMO is exactly like that. It's just that the inputs are the client requirements, the process is the project management process that you're using, and the outputs are, you know, whatever the deliverables of the project are. So there's a lot of similarities between operational management and running a PMO, even though the business of a PMO is running projects.